Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from February 18th, 2022, and I'm recording this on August 19th, 2022. I give you those dates so that you know when this information is actually relevant because the comic market is always moving and changing, although lately it's been mostly changing in the downward direction. But still want you to know when this is relevant because some news could come out and change what these prices are going for. So, as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Each week they put out a list of 10 books. This week we got 15 books between the two lists, so 5 crossover books, which is a lot. And that was partially because we'll get to the bottom of the list. A certain trailer dropped and a lot of people were specking on the same things and chasing the same things. So without further ado, let's dig into these 15 books, see what we can learn about what was happening back then, how the books were affected, how they responded since, and whether we've been a little better off just being patient, which has been a pretty consistent theme this year as most everything has dropped. So let's get into this list. First up, we got Harbinger, number 1. From 1992, this Valiant comic had rumors that they were going to actually, Paramount was working on a movie. So raw copies were hitting an average around $90. That was coupon with coupon. 9.8 with a coupon went for $1,300, whereas the 9.8 without went for like $3. So you can get an idea of where the prices were on that book. So it was going for pretty high. Now it's a $60 to $200 book with the coupon, with most of the sales around that $90, $100 mark. But a few sales a little higher, a few sales a little lower, even with the coupon. 9.8s with the coupon are only a couple of sales, but $700 and $850 is where those sales were at. So 9.8 is definitely backed up, but overall, like on the raw side, this was definitely pretty steady, kind of worth it in terms of the pricing for the with coupon raw copies. 9.8s were clearly down, but there was only a couple of sales, so I didn't really. And when I classified this, I classified it based on those raw sales. So a book that's done pretty well, at least on the raw side of holding its value. Next, we're going to move into, so that was our only kind of option book this week. Next, we're going to move into covers. And first up, we have Something is Killing the Children, number 21. The one per store ash can when Something is Killing Children came back with new storyline, issue 21. They put out this at one per store ash can, and people went nuts for it because we all know the history of what the early Something is Killing Children books have done. This was going for $100 to $125 for a raw copy. Yeah, now it's a $30 to $60 book for a raw copy, which is actually pretty good value on a one per store 6 months after. Just nowhere near what the craziness was when people were first chasing it. If people hadn't been so hyped, you'd say this is pretty good value. If you got this for, around the $20, $30 mark, you can make something here, but not near what it was going for back then. 9.8s of this are going ranging all the way from $100 to $200 on the sales. So this one definitely turned into a trap. If you went after this immediately, haven't read this new storyline yet. I've been reading Something is Killing the Children via the trade, so looking forward to reading it, but it does appear that maybe some of the hype has finally died down on Something is Killing the Children. At least its print run has went up, hype has died down a little bit, so these books have not performed like they were early on, like the early issues did. Next, we have Usagio Jimbo, number 26. This is the Stan and Julie Sakai 1 in 10 variant, so they worked together on this one, husband and wife, so that made collectors a little more interested in it. It went for $35 to $40 right out of the gate for this 1 in 10, which is triple quadruple ratio, which made me think, maybe this will be worth it. A little bit of nostalgia with them both working on it, but didn't work out that way. Now it's a $20 to $30 book, still really good for a 1 in 10, but definitely an I'll be back if you'd been a little bit patient. So definitely down a little bit. A book that you just wanted to be patient on. Still kind of a cool thing that they worked on it together. Our next cover, or last cover really, is, well, sort of. We'll get into, we have one that's kind of two things, but last true just cover is RWBY number 7, the Derek Chu Walmart variant. If you don't know what happened here, the creator of this series passed away. So they were never actually supposed to issue number 7, although a few copies leaked out there, including these Walmart variants that came out in prepackaged 3-packs that made it to the stores. So these were going for big money, $100 for these, if you can find them. Now it's a $25 to $40 book. 9.8 still go for really big money, $350 to $450, or I shouldn't say still are going for big money after these ones had leaked out. But overall, on the raw side, this is definitely a dumpster fire. I mean, it's a $20, $30 book on what was a $100 book. You're talking about a 70% decrease. Just not any real momentum on seeing if this series is going to go anywhere now with the creator kind of passing away. I know it's based on like an anime show and some other stuff, but so it's still kind of out there, but we'll see if anything can re-energize any interest in this particular book. Next, we can get into comic buzz and covers a little bit, and this is Iron Fist #1, the 1 in 50 Gunji variant, and this, I put it as kind of cover in comic buzz because this is the new series with the new Iron Fist. This cover was going for, this 1 in 50 was only going for 100 plus, so just slightly over double ratio. Usually not a great sign. So I put this as an I'll Be Back, and that's really what it was. Now it's a $50 to $100 book for a raw copy. 9.8 only cost you $150 to $3, so big wide range on these 9.8s again. But definitely an I'll Be Back on this one if you were just patient with the this 1 in 50 of the first appearance of the new Iron Fist. Next, we have Swordmaster #1. Obviously, this is the character that became the new Iron Fist. This was his origin story back in 2019. Raw copies of this were going for $15 back then, but a 9.8 jumped all the way up to a high sale of $200. Now it's a $5 to $15 book on the raw side, but a 9.8 is $30 to $50, and there were several sales in that range. So I put this as a dumpster fire for that 9.8 side. There's still more sales on the raw side, and obviously that's kind of an I'll Be Back because there was only 15 to begin with. But those 9.8 sales, there's enough of them that I felt like, yeah, this is turned into a really bad decision if you chased a $200 9.8 on this book. Next, we have War of the Realms, New Agents of Atlas #2, which is the first appearance of Lin Lee, the Sword Master, who was becoming the new Iron Fist. Back then, a 9.8 of this book jumped all the way up to 400 plus, and now it's a $125 to $200 book. So yeah, that's another dumpster fire. You can borderline just a trap at the $200 side of things, but most of the sales are in the $125 to $150 range. Raw copies of this will still cost you $40 to $50, which is not that different than they were back there, although they didn't include the price and I didn't add it back then. But yeah, not down as much on that side, but definitely way down on those 9.8s. And yeah, just not a lot of momentum at the moment for this particular character. I don't know if people haven't enjoyed the run or what. I just haven't heard anybody really talk about it since it initially happened. And Iron Fist is not a character I've really ever read. So next we have Extreme Justice #9, the first in continuity appearance of the Wonder Twins. And there were rumors that we were going to get a Wonder Twins movie at HBO Max or maybe in theaters. And yeah, that's probably not going to happen with all the things that have happened with Discovery and Warner Brothers here lately, basically just crushing everything DC that was being made. So back then, though, this book was up to a $25 book raw, 25 plus raw, 9.8 hit $250. Now it's a $10 to $25 book raw. So it really didn't become the trap I thought it was. It's more of an I'll Be Back. Even with this news, I think there's just more people are knowledgeable of this book, and there's enough people of my age, slightly older, I guess, that are interested in the Wonder Twins that remember them from the Super Friends cartoons. Next is Wonder Twins #1, which is their first solo title, which didn't happen all the way till 2019. Back then, I don't know how hot this was. They basically put it on the list because it's one of those Tom Key Collector specials. 2,000% increase in sales, even though it was still only going for $8. Still going 5 to 12, so average around $8. 9.8 will cost you 35 to 60. Kind of was worth it instead, even though the number of sales are obviously way, way down. But yeah, it's still that same price range. With that, we're going to move into one Star Wars book before we'll get into all those MCU Spec books that I was talking about earlier. First up is Star Wars The High Republic #7. First appearance of Darth Krall. This was a kind of a, and also Orla Jaren, anyway, a member of the Jedi Order. that were new characters in the High Republic. This was a Jim comic special in terms of he brought it up as, hey, there's a Sith, maybe that's going to be maybe this is the first appearance of a Sith Lord and the first Sith Lord we see in the High Republic. Back then I was a little worried about this one because according to canon, the Sith had been gone for 1,000 years, and so couldn't imagine him playing too big of a role in the High Republic storyline. So far he has not, other than this one appearance, I think. Raw copies of this, though, back then jumped up to a $10 to $20. 9.8 was hitting 80, so nothing too high, but this has definitely been an I'll be back. It's a $5 to $10 book now. $40 to $60 for a 9.8, so definitely an I'll be back. Orla was a character I really liked. No spoilers there, but yeah, I don't know that she has much of a long-term value either. But so with that, we're going to move into MCU Spec. First up is not related to the trailer. It is related to the Moon Knight show that was coming out. And we have Secret Avengers number 19, first appearance of the Mr. Knight persona, which I was surprised this occurred this recently. I thought that version of the character had been around longer. Back then, raw copies were going for $30 to $50. 9.8 was going for $300 because an image leaked prior to the release of the show showing this persona. I don't know if it was leaked or was just released, I guess. And so we got the show. I think it was very mixed reviews on this. I think everybody liked Oscar Isaac, but the rest of the show was a little bit of a mess. But anyway, now it's a $10 to $30 book. 9.8 is only $100 to $150. So this one turned into a trap, which is, even if the show had been great, has been the pattern on these Marvel shows anyway. As you move away from the show, these books fall way back, and that has happened again with Moon Knight. And that seems to happen regardless of how well received the show seems to be. Next, we're going to move into the trailer. We got 4 books here related to the release of the first Doctor Strange trailer. I don't know if it was the first one, but the Super Bowl trailer. We got Avengers number 246, the first appearance of Maria Rambeau. And basically we had a character that looked like either, we weren't sure who it was in the trailer, but it was definitely an alternate kind of Captain Marvel looking character. So people were specking on Maria Rambeau. This jumped up to a $5 to $20 book. 9.8 hit 115, which is pretty reasonable for this kind of spec. But it still didn't hold. It's now a $1 to $15 book. So the raw copies are still overlapping, but it's definitely an I'll be back. Definitely a book that you can come back on. No recent sales of like a high grade slab copy. So yeah, she just didn't. It was the respect that she was the figure. It turned out she was. Still didn't matter to really producing high value on this book. Next, we have Superior Iron Man number 1. This is the other character that people thought that person in the trailer could be. This is the first appearance of Superior Iron Man. So this is the one people really jumped on. There was all these stories about, Tom Cruise is going to be this, because he was supposedly going to be Iron Man years and years and years ago before they cast Downey Jr., like in the late 90s. And yeah, so everybody was jumping on that we're going to get Tom Cruise, because we got all those characters came back for Spider-Man. We're going to get Tom Cruise, even though he was never signed on to do it. Not really. Anyway, back then, raw copies jumped all the way up to $35 to $40, 40 plus for this. Now it's a $5 to $25 book. 9.8 is $100. This did not happen. This is definitely a trap. This was just bad spec overall. Next, we have New Avengers Illuminati Special number 1. This is the first team title for the Illuminati. We seem to get confirmation we're getting at least a version of the Illuminati in the trailer. We did get a version in the movie. And back then, raw copies were 15 to 40, 9.8 up to 100. Now it's a $5 to $15 book, 9.8, 50 to 70. Doesn't look like there's a future for that, at least that version of the Illuminati. So yeah, this is another book that turned into a big giant trap. And I'll be honest, back then I laughed at the spec on this one. I was like, this is first team title? Like, that's never been a thing, really? So yeah. This one did not hold, and it was definitely not more bad spec. And then last we have New Avengers number 7, and this was the big book after the trailer, the first appearance of the Illuminati. Even though there were no actual character first appearances in this book, it's just first appearance of that group. Back then it was up to, this book had hovered around a $20 to $30 book, dropping back to a $10 to $15, up to a $20 to $30 book for a long time as people speculated on the Illuminati. It jumped all the way up to a $75 to $100 book following the trailer. 9.8 going for $6.50. Now it's a $10 to $30 book, although one recent sale was for $50 on a raw side. But the vast majority of sales in that $10 to $30 range. 9.8 down to $90 to $150 from $6.50. Yeah, that's a dumpster fire. That is not done well. I tried to tell people, this is one of those I felt, I felt very strongly about back then, that this was not the time to chase that book. And it turned out to be true. So it was one of those, the movie is come and gone. That version of the Illuminati has definitely come and gone. So we'll see going forward. But yeah, this one definitely was not a book to chase during the hype. So with that is this week's list. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.